I'm not the kind of guy who usually makes waves. I keep to myself, stay out of drama, and try to be the person who diffuses tension, not adds to it. My name's Noah. I'm 23, just out of college, working 2 jobs while trying to get my foot in the door as a graphic designer. I don't come from money, far from it, but I've always taken pride in making the most out of what I have. Creativity isn't just a hobby for me. It's how I survive. That mindset shaped everything about me. The way I dress, the way I think, and apparently, the way people judge me. My family doesn't really get me. They tolerate me. My mom used to say I was artsy, but lately, it's shifted into something more like embarrassing. Dad keeps quiet. He's always been the silent buffer between my mom and me, especially when she starts in on her favorite topic. How much better things would be if I were more like my sister. Jenna. Jenna's 26, gorgeous, confident, and endlessly successful in the way that makes parents beam and strangers jealous. She got a business degree, landed some marketing job with a huge salary and perks, and somehow manages to always be either engaged or freshly single. The drama is exhausting, but my parents eat it up. They brag about her like she's royalty. Every call from extended family ends with some variation of, "Did you hear what Jenna did?" Meanwhile, I might as well be wallpaper. Or worse, a mistake they're still too polite to admit they regret. I think it all started shifting when I moved back in after college. Rent's insane, and with freelance gigs being hit or miss, I figured I'd swallow my pride and stay in the basement suite until I could afford my own place. At first, it was temporary. A couple of months, max. But then just until I land a steady client became maybe next spring. And suddenly I'm the freeloading son, the one who's still finding himself. While Jenna buys a new car and flaunts designer handbags she probably didn't even pay full price for. I tried to ignore it. Really, I did. I cooked dinner a few nights a week, helped around the house, stayed out of the way. But the subtle digs kept coming, especially from Jenna. She never outright insulted me in front of our parents, but she had this way of saying things that hit just a little too sharp to be casual. Like, "Noah, you'd actually look really cute if you shopped at places with actual lighting." Or, "I love how you thrift. It's so post-apocalyptic chic." Delivered with a wink, like it was a joke. But we both knew it wasn't. The worst part was how mom would smirk, like Jenna had a point. Or how dad would do that half-cough, half-laugh thing he does when he doesn't want to pick a side. So I stopped replying. I stopped defending myself. I figured if I could just stay under the radar long enough, I'd be out of there before any real damage was done. Then came the Halloween party. It was Jenna's idea, of course. A family-friendly costume party with a twist, she called it. Every year, some ritzy couple in our neighborhood hosted a big costume contest with a cash prize, $10,000 to the best costume, judged by some local artists and influencers. Jenna had been going for years, always flaunting her expensive designer get-ups. One year, she went as Marie Antoinette, with a towering wig and a dress that probably cost more than my car. Another year, she was a vampire queen, with Swarovski crystals glued to her face. Never won, but she always made a splash. This year, the party was being hosted at their newly renovated vineyard, and Jenna was practically frothing at the mouth about it. She dragged our parents into helping her plan her look. Some Medusa-inspired gown with custom silicone snake pieces that wrapped around her arms. She even hired a local FX artist to do her makeup. My mom swooned over the fittings. Dad offered to drive her to her appointments. I, as usual, was wallpaper. But that prize money, that caught my attention. $10,000 could change everything for me. It could pay off my student loan balance, buy me a new laptop to finally handle the heavier rendering jobs, even cover a deposit on a real place to live. And while I knew Jenna would laugh in my face, I couldn't shake the thought that if I did this right, if I really went all in, I had a shot. So I started planning. Not with money, I didn't have any, but with time. I spent weeks sketching ideas, combing through thrift stores, gathering scraps, testing paints, gluing, sewing, layering, rebuilding. I treated it like a design challenge. Could I make something unforgettable using only things people had thrown away? I worked in secret, mostly in the basement, telling my parents I was working late or hanging out with friends. The truth was, I was knee-deep in fabric scraps and melted plastic, sculpting something that slowly began to look like magic. I won't spoil what the costume was just yet. That reveal deserves its own moment. But let's just say, It was unlike anything anyone at that party had ever seen, and it cost me less than $30 total. The night of the party, I came upstairs in full costume, unsure of what to expect. My parents were already dressed and waiting by the door, fawning over Jenna, who looked like she'd stepped off a movie set. Her snake crown glittered under the chandelier. Her gown clung like it had been stitched by angels. And the moment she saw me, she burst out laughing. "Oh my God," she said, doubling over, grabbing her friend Beth's arm for balance. "Noah, what even is that? Did you lose a bet?" Her friend, someone I'd never met, probably another clone from her marketing job, snorted. "Didn't know they let homeless people in." The laugh that followed was loud. Too loud. The kind that's meant to humiliate, not amuse. I looked at my parents, hoping, maybe, just this once, they'd say something. But Mom just adjusted her earring and muttered, "You should have asked Jenna for help, honey." Dad wouldn't even meet my eye. I swallowed hard and said nothing. Because in that moment, I realized something. They didn't believe I could win. None of them did. They thought I was a joke. The weird younger brother with glue stains on his hands and thrift store boots on his feet. But they were about to learn something I'd spent years mastering. The punchline always hits harder when no one sees it coming. So I turned, without a word, and walked out to the car. And that's when the night really started to unravel. The drive to the vineyard was quiet, and by quiet, I mean smothered in that kind of awkward silence where everyone's pretending everything is normal while ignoring the elephant in the car. In this case, the fact that Jenna had just humiliated me in front of our parents and they'd done absolutely nothing about it. Not a word. "No, that was rude. No, Jenna. Apologize." Nothing. I sat in the back seat because, of course, Jenna had called shotgun before I even made it to the door. She and Mom chatted about the lighting at the venue, how her dress might sparkle in photos, how the FX makeup would probably smear if anyone got too close. Dad nodded along from the driver's seat, but even he cracked a smile when Jenna made a jab about how some people didn't get the memo that it wasn't a dumpster-themed party. I don't know what hurt more, the fact that they didn't defend me or the fact that they laughed. It wasn't even a real laugh. It was one of those shallow, throat-choked chuckles that says, "We don't want to upset her." But I kept my mouth shut. Because that costume contest? That $10,000? It was my exit ticket. It was my win. And if I lost my cool now, if I barked back or started a fight, all it would do was prove their narrative right, that I was bitter, weird, too sensitive. So I sat in the back with my costume carefully folded over my lap, watching the trees blur past as we wound down the country roads toward the venue. The vineyard looked like something out of a magazine. Lanterns lit the path up the hill, glowing amber against the October dusk. Giant barrels had been stacked like decorations, draped with ivy and fake cobwebs. A fire pit crackled in the distance, surrounded by guests in elaborate, high-budget costumes. Think Hollywood-level Dracula, Cleopatra with real gold thread, and an 8-foot mech suit that I'm pretty sure required an actual car battery. I swallowed hard. This wasn't just a neighborhood costume party. This was a showcase. And I was about to walk in wearing something made out of torn-up curtains, molded wire hangers, and a whole lot of imagination. Jenna practically glided out of the car. "Wish me luck," she sang, her snake crown catching the firelight. Her heels clicked like punctuation marks across the stone path as she made her entrance, arms spread, head high, soaking in the attention. I followed behind with my parents, staying a few steps back. I could feel their hesitation radiating off them, like they were embarrassed to be seen walking in with me. Mom gave me a quick glance, forced a smile, and whispered, "Just try to enjoy yourself, okay? Don't take things so seriously." I wanted to ask her how she'd feel if Jenna was the one being mocked, if someone had laughed at her dress and called her homeless. But what was the point? They never saw it. Jenna had a way of being cruel that came gift-wrapped in charisma. She could stab you with a smile, and somehow, you'd end up apologizing for bleeding. Inside the main hall, the party was in full swing. Music thumped softly under a layer of laughter and clinking glasses. Waiters drifted by with trays of themed cocktails and miniature hors d'oeuvres. People were taking photos in front of a massive harvest-themed backdrop with glowing pumpkins and hay bales stacked like a Pinterest board come to life. I took my time getting changed, using one of the guest bathrooms to assemble the final pieces of my costume in private. It took about 20 minutes to get everything secured, the wire framing, the paint-smudged layers, the handmade attachments. But when I looked at myself in the mirror, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not in spite of where it came from, but because of it. I didn't have silicone prosthetics or Swarovski crystals. I didn't need a budget. I had vision. And after months of being talked over, brushed aside, and treated like the family embarrassment, I was finally ready to step into the spotlight on my own terms. The moment I stepped out, I caught eyes. People turned. At first, I thought maybe there was something wrong. Maybe something ripped, or I had paint on my face where it shouldn't be. But no, they were staring. Their expressions weren't mocking. They were intrigued, curious, even impressed. I kept walking, trying not to smile. That's when I saw Jenna across the room. She was surrounded by a small crowd, mostly other Instagram-ready guests who looked like they belonged on red carpets instead of vineyard patios. Her eyes landed on me and narrowed, just for a second. That tiny flicker of confusion. Like she wasn't sure what she was looking at, but she didn't like that people were looking at me. Beth, her friend from earlier, leaned in and said something I couldn't hear, and they both laughed again. But it wasn't as loud this time. Not as sure. Still, Jenna couldn't let it go. She walked over, wine glass in hand, eyebrows arched. "So what is this?" she asked, gesturing vaguely at my costume. "Some kind of street art? Homeless chic meets garbage sculpture?" I smiled calmly. "It's an upcycled elemental wraith, made entirely from found objects and thrifted material. Took me about a month." She blinked. "Oh, that's ambitious." Beth stepped up beside her. "Looks like something from one of those student art shows where no one actually gets the piece but pretends they do." I glanced past them. More people were looking, not just at me, at us, and not in the way Jenna wanted. Jenna straightened up. "Well," she said, voice a little louder, "good luck. You're gonna need it. Some of these costumes probably cost more than your car." "Probably," I said, but mine didn't need a receipt. Her smile twitched. The night went on like that, subtle digs, icy glances, and lots of behind-the-hand whispers I was never quite close enough to hear. But here's the thing. People kept coming up to me. Strangers. Complimenting my costume. Asking how I made it. One guy even asked if I took commissions. I could feel the shift in the air. Jenna could, too, which is probably why she escalated. At one point, I was standing near the food table when I overheard her talking to a group of guests near the punch bowl. She wasn't even whispering. "He's my brother. Can you believe that? He lives in my parents' basement. Honestly, he probably came just for the free food." I froze. The people she was talking to looked uncomfortable. One of them, a woman dressed as a high priestess or something equally dramatic, offered a weak laugh and said, "Well, his costume is really creative." Jenna smiled like that was the cue she'd been waiting for. "Sure, if you like garbage cosplay. He's always been like that. Tried to go into design, but never really made anything of himself. He freeloads and pretends he's just finding his artistic voice." The words hit me like cold water. But I didn't move. I didn't storm off or yell or throw my drink in her face, though believe me, I imagined it. I just turned and walked away before she could see that my hands were shaking. I found a quiet spot near the back terrace, behind one of the wine barrel displays, and just breathed for a moment. Let the cool air settle the fire in my chest. And that's when I saw Mom and Dad. They were talking to Jenna just a few feet away, and I don't think they realized I was close enough to hear. "She's just trying to impress people," Dad said. "You know how she gets. But does she have to do it at Noah's expense?" Mom whispered back. He looked hurt. She didn't mean it. And anyway, people love her. Let her have her moment. Noah's not exactly a social butterfly. Mom didn't argue. They just stood there, sipping wine, while their daughter picked me apart for sport. I don't think I've ever felt smaller. But at the same time, something shifted in me. Like a wire finally snapped. I'd spent years being the quiet one. The overlooked one. The joke. I'd let their favoritism slide. Let Jenna's cruelty pass as sarcasm. Let my parents' silence stand in for acceptance. But that night, something in me woke up. I was done being the background character in my own life. And if the stars aligned, if my gamble paid off, I was going to make damn sure they remembered this night for the rest of their lives. I wish I could say I shook off what happened by the terrace. That I marched back into the crowd with my head high and my heart steel-clad, fueled by a burning desire to prove everyone wrong. But the truth is, I stood there for a long time, fingers clenched into fists inside the sleeves of my costume, blinking away the sting in my eyes like some stupid kid who'd just learned Santa wasn't real. Because it wasn't just about Jenna anymore. It wasn't about her jokes or the way she turned every room into a spotlight with her name carved on it. It was the way my parents stood there, wine glasses in hand, and let it all slide. Again, I kept replaying their words in my head like a scratched record. She didn't mean it. Let her have her moment. That wasn't just indifference. That was complicity. I wasn't their son in that moment. I was collateral, an acceptable casualty in Jenna's glittering rise to social dominance. And I hated how much it still hurt. At 23 years old, after everything, after the years of being invisible, the snide remarks, the emotional drive-by shootings disguised as just teasing, it still hurt. Eventually, the crowd started shifting toward the center of the venue. A man with a headset and clipboard began organizing everyone into rows for the costume walk. The contest was about to begin. I pulled myself together and moved toward the staging area. There were around 40 contestants in total, each more elaborate than the next. A woman in a phoenix dress with animatronic wings. A guy dressed as a walking chessboard with sculpted, moving pieces. Even a duo in a two-person centaur costume with a working tail mechanism. It was intimidating, but I also couldn't help feeling this strange buzz beneath the nerves. That low thrum of maybe I had a shot. The way the contest worked, everyone would walk the length of the main hall while the judges, 3 local artists, an influencer, and someone from the event sponsor, observed from a seated panel near the back. They'd rank creativity, originality, effort, and execution. A few honorary mentions, 3 runner-ups, and 1 grand prize winner. The $10,000 check. That check was taped to a display easel near the judging table. I couldn't stop staring at it. I imagined holding it, depositing it, putting the down payment on a studio apartment, upgrading my tools, maybe even framing a print version of it on my future wall, just to remind myself that I earned something. I was slated to go second to last. Jenna was third. Of course she was. It was the perfect spot. Early enough to leave an impression, but not so late that people got costume fatigue. She knew how to work a crowd. And work it, she did. When her turn came, the entire room seemed to shift. The lights dimmed slightly, probably coordinated, and the speakers played this ambient, slithering sound that mimicked hissing snakes. She walked slowly, deliberately, arms out, her gown catching every bit of light like fire on water. The prosthetic snakes moved slightly as she turned her head. It was like watching a red carpet event during Fashion Week. Her confidence wasn't just visible, it was weaponized. People gasped. Phones came out. One of the judges leaned forward, mouth slightly open. And Jenna ate it up. When she reached the end of the walkway, she bowed, low and theatrical, and gave a coy little wink to the panel. I watched one of the judges grin. Another clapped. She returned to her spot near the back, her smile wide and smug, cheeks flushed with adrenaline and validation. She looked at me, and for a brief second, her gaze wasn't mocking. It was pitying, like she'd already decided the outcome. My turn was coming. The contestant before me, a woman dressed as a Victorian time traveler with actual fog machines in her skirt, was halfway through her presentation. I shifted my costume into place, checked the fasteners, adjusted the framing. Everything was ready. Everything I'd worked on, hidden, glued, stitched, and sweated over was about to be revealed. And that's when it happened. Jenna appeared beside me, all smiles. "Hey," she said, in that syrupy sweet voice that always meant danger. "Can I help you with your back piece? It's slipping a little." I hesitated. I hadn't noticed anything slipping. I reached up to check, but she was already behind me, adjusting something near my shoulder blade. "It's fine, I got it," I said. But she kept going. No, I see it. Just a second." I felt her fingers tugging at the strap. Then something snapped. A faint click. My stomach dropped. "What did you do?" I spun around, trying to reach behind me. The right side of my costume sagged slightly, the main shoulder rig coming loose. A fastener, one of the key clips I'd used to balance the framing, was now undone, barely hanging on by a thread. Jenna stepped back, hands raised in faux surprise. "Oh no. Oh wow, I'm so sorry. I must have pulled too hard." The stagehand called, "You're up next." I looked at her, eyes wide. "Did you just—" She gave me this innocent smile. "It was an accident, Noah. Honestly, you should be more careful with your materials." Then she turned and walked away, already blending into the crowd like nothing had happened. My hands scrambled behind me, trying to reattach the fastener, but the clip was bent. Not broken, but warped just enough that it wouldn't hold. I had seconds. My name was being announced. There wasn't time. I held my breath, adjusted what I could, and stepped onto the runway. The lights were too bright. The music had shifted to some neutral background track. I walked slowly, trying to keep my movements steady so the costume wouldn't tilt too much to the right. Every step was calculated, every glance forward forced, but I still heard the whispering, still saw the judges noticing the slight imbalance, still caught the faint smirk on Jenna's face as I reached the end and turned. The room didn't gasp like they had for her. There were no sound effects, no phones raised, a few polite claps. One of the judges scribbled something down without looking up. I made it back to my spot and stood still, heart pounding. My shoulder ached from holding the weight unevenly. My vision blurred slightly from the stress. And then the worst part, I looked at my parents. They hadn't noticed. Or worse, they had and were pretending they hadn't. Dad was talking to someone behind him. Mom was staring at Jenna, eyes wide with pride. It was like I hadn't even walked the runway at all. The announcer returned to the mic. We'll take a short break while the judges make their decision. Winners will be announced shortly. As the room buzzed with chatter and speculation, I slipped out the side door and leaned against the cold brick wall of the venue. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I didn't. I just stood there, breathing through my nose, tasting metal and rage. She did it. Jenna sabotaged me, and no one saw. Or worse, no one cared. This wasn't just teasing. This wasn't just sibling rivalry. This was deliberate, cold, calculated. A betrayal so casual, so smoothly executed, it made me question whether she'd done it before, whether all those accidents growing up weren't so accidental after all. I stared out at the vineyard rows disappearing into the darkness, lit only by the distant glow of string lights and the occasional flicker of a cigarette from other guests sneaking breaks. And that's when I made a decision. I wasn't walking away quietly. Not this time. The breeze outside was sharp, laced with October's quiet warning that winter was coming soon. I stood in the cold longer than I probably should have, letting it sting my face, ground me. There was something strangely comforting about the way the chill bit at my skin. It reminded me I was still here, still standing, still real. Inside, the party continued like nothing had happened. Laughter, music, glittering gowns, clinking glasses. The entire vineyard had turned into a golden carnival of curated perfection. And there I was, standing alone behind a row of crates near the emergency exit, my costume tilted and slipping, my stomach hollowed out like someone had taken an ice cream scooper to my insides. Jenna had won. Not the contest. Not yet. But she'd won again. The way she always did. By smiling in my face and stabbing me in the back while everyone clapped for her. And the worst part? No one noticed. No one ever noticed. It was like screaming underwater. You could feel the scream vibrating in your throat, but the world remained deaf. I sat down on an overturned barrel, my costume crunching awkwardly beneath me. One of the side pieces had collapsed in the back, the fabric twisted from the weight of the warped fastener. It wasn't ruined, not completely, but it looked like a makeshift shelter now, something a desperate person might build out of scrap in an alleyway. I could practically hear Jenna's voice echoing in my head. Didn't know they let homeless people in. I let out a breath and tipped my head back. Above me, the sky was clear and full of stars. Too bright for how I felt. Too serene. But in a way, it calmed me. Out here, there were no phones, no stage lights, no fake smiles or clinking flutes of champagne. Just cold air, darkness, and the quiet truth of being utterly alone. That's when I heard the door creak behind me. I turned slightly, expecting maybe a server taking a smoke break or a guest looking for the bathroom. But it was Beth, Jenna's friend. The one who'd laughed the loudest when Jenna made the homeless joke. She paused when she saw me. I didn't say anything, just went back to staring out into the vineyard. Hey, she said after a moment. You all right? I gave her a look. What do you think? Beth shifted uncomfortably. She was still in costume, some kind of glam rock vampire, I think. But without the crowd around her, the attitude was gone. She suddenly looked younger. Uncertain. I didn't realize she actually messed with your costume, she said. I thought she was just being. Jenna, I finished for her. Yeah, she was. Beth looked down at her shoes. Look, I didn't mean to laugh. I mean, I did, but I didn't think it'd be that mean. I didn't respond. I didn't want to let her off the hook that easily. She sat down on the edge of the crate beside me, arms crossed tight against the chill. You know, she said after a while. She talks about you a lot. Like, more than you'd think. That surprised me. Really? Beth nodded. Mostly when she's drinking. Says you're smart. Talented. That you could do something amazing if you ever got over yourself. She made air quotes around that last part. I laughed, a bitter, dry sound. That sounds about right. She's jealous, you know, Beth added quietly. I turned to look at her, genuinely stunned. Jealous? Beth shrugged. Yeah, not of your clothes or your bank account or whatever, but of how free you are. Like, you actually make stuff. You don't care what people think. You walk around in your weird outfits, and you own it. Jenna, she's obsessed with appearances. She needs people to like her. Needs to be the center of attention. You don't. That silence stretched between us again. I didn't know what to say. Maybe because part of me wanted to believe it. Part of me wanted it to be true so badly. That Jenna's cruelty came from some place of insecurity instead of just malice. But she still sabotaged me, I finally said. On purpose. And our parents? They let it happen. Beth looked away. Yeah, they did. She didn't stay long after that. Just gave me a nod and slipped back inside, leaving me with more questions than comfort. I sat there for a while longer. Maybe 20 minutes. Maybe an hour. Time lost meaning somewhere between the wind and the way the sky just wouldn't cloud over. Eventually, I stood up. My legs ached from sitting in the cold. My costume sagged with the weight of the busted strap. I gathered what I could, made it stable enough to walk again, and started making my way back to the main hall. But I didn't go inside. I stayed near the corner where the shadows gathered, tucked behind a vine-covered pillar that let me see everything without being seen. The judges were back on stage. The crowd was buzzing with anticipation. My parents stood near the bar, smiling and sipping drinks like proud guests at their daughter's royal coronation. Jenna was front and center, chatting with two of the panelists. Of course she was, laughing with them like they were old friends. I listened as the announcer took the mic and began listing the runners-up. Honorable mention to the steampunk centaur. Third place to the animatronic phoenix. Second place to the chessboard guy. Each name felt like another shovel of dirt on the tiny hope I still held. I could have left right then. Slipped away into the night. Back to the basement room with the half-broken lamp and the folding table I used as a desk. Let the night dissolve into just another memory of being overshadowed, overstepped, and overlooked. But I didn't. Because standing there, half hidden in the shadows, I felt something shift inside me. Not rage. Not sadness. Something quieter. Colder. Resolute. This wasn't the first time Jenna had humiliated me. And judging by my parents' faces, lit up like they were watching a wedding proposal, it wasn't going to be the last. Not unless I did something. I didn't know what yet. But I knew this wasn't going to be the story's ending. I slipped back outside, past the rows of parked cars, past the glowing jack-o'-lanterns and the fancy valet table, until I reached the far lot where my dad's car was parked. I took off the bulk of my costume there, folding it carefully and storing it in the trunk. Then I opened my sketchbook, the one I always kept in my bag, and started writing. Not drawing. Writing. Ideas. Thoughts. Names. A timeline. I wrote until my fingers were stiff from the cold. And then I wrote some more. Because if Jenna wanted to play games, that was fine. But I had just decided I was done playing by her rules. It started small. A spark, really. Not a full-on blaze or fireworks moment. Just a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. Not over everything. Not yet, but over something. My own story. My next move. My silence, at that party, had felt like surrender. But that sketchbook? That page of notes? That was a blueprint. And for the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was planning. I didn't go home with my parents that night. I told them I was grabbing food with some friends. A lie, but one they didn't question because, frankly, they were too busy celebrating Jenna. She didn't win the grand prize, by the way. First place went to the guy in the mech suit. A dark horse victory, and judging by the tightness in Jenna's smile on the drive home, so I heard later, she didn't take it well. I didn't care. I walked back to town from the vineyard. Took over an hour. My costume in a trash bag over my shoulder, my sketchbook tucked under one arm, earbuds in, but playing nothing. I just needed the walk, the quiet, the cold, the long stretch of empty road under a sky that finally looked how I felt. Dark, vast, and ready. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was anxious or hurt or spinning in some emotional storm. That part had already passed. No, This was different. My mind was awake, buzzing, wired in a way that felt electric. I laid out all my notes on the floor, sorted through old receipts, glued fragments from the costume onto the walls of my basement room. I turned my failure into a map. And then I got to work. I started with the costume itself. The broken fastener, the warped shoulder rig, the uneven weight distribution. I redesigned the whole system from scratch. Stronger materials, better balance, more mobility. I wanted to make something not just impressive, but unforgettable. Something that couldn't be laughed at, couldn't be dismissed, couldn't be sabotaged. Then I opened a new file on my laptop, labeled it Project Drift. It wasn't a costume anymore. It was a brand. Over the next few weeks, I worked in secret. Not because I was afraid of anyone finding out, but because I liked the silence now. I liked having something no one could pick apart or undermine or belittle before it was ready. I worked during the day at my part-time print shop job, designing flyers and business cards for dentists and hair salons, and spent every night stitching, sculpting, documenting. I built a rig in the basement out of PVC pipe and zip ties. Hung pieces of the costume on it like it was a mannequin, slowly building a gallery. Then I set up an Instagram. Not under my name, under the brand. Driftworks_official. No selfies. No bios. Just photos. Clean, stark, dramatic shots of each element. Macro textures. Before and after transitions of thrifted junk becoming intricate designs. I didn't tag anyone. Didn't ask for followers. Just posted. Slowly. Consistently. I kept a spreadsheet of growth. 2 followers the first day. For the next. Then 10. Then 20. It wasn't much, not viral by any means, but every click, every heart, was a reminder that someone saw value in what I created. That momentum bled into other areas of my life. I started getting up earlier, reading more, sketching not just costumes but sets, stage concepts, installations. I emailed 3 local event organizers asking if they needed set design interns. 1 never replied. 1 said, maybe in the spring. But the third, a small avant-garde theater downtown, said yes. Unpaid at first, of course. But that didn't matter. I showed up twice a week. Helped paint flats, sew curtains, set up props. The director, a woman named Talia with gray streaks in her black curls and a 1,000-yard stare, noticed my sketches one night and asked me to bring more. A week later, she gave me my first solo assignment, a dream sequence set for a student production. Nothing huge, but it was mine. My parents didn't ask questions. I told them I was working on some freelance projects, which was technically true. Jenna, meanwhile, was planning her Christmas trip to Aspen and posting about it on every social platform imaginable. She had just landed some new brand ambassador role with a fitness company, which apparently meant she got free leggings and told people how great they were. Why don't you help Jenna with her content? Mom asked one morning over coffee. She's looking for someone to do video edits. I looked up from my oatmeal. You mean you want me to be her editor? She blinked. Well, you're always on your computer. I smiled. Pass. She frowned like I'd said something rude. Dad said nothing. I went back to my oatmeal. The days bled into weeks. November passed like a fast-forward reel, and soon December rolled in, sharp and gray. The theater offered me a stipend. Not much, but enough to matter. And Driftworks passed 500 followers. Then 1,000. I started getting DMs, requests for commissions, offers to collab. Someone even invited me to submit a piece to a wearable art gallery in Portland. Then, the email came. Subject line, $10K contest opportunity, sponsored by Creative Forge. It was a national design competition. Open call for wearable art and functional fashion. Top prize, $10,000. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I did. And because I wasn't going to tell anyone. Not Jenna. Not my parents. Not even Beth, who had randomly started liking my Instagram posts after Halloween, but hadn't spoken to me since. I submitted my concept under my brand name. Uploaded the photos. The materials list. The video walkthrough. Every inch of it handmade, repurposed, and reimagined. I double-checked every spelling, every form field. And then I hit send. For 2 weeks, I heard nothing. Then, on a Thursday morning in mid-December, I woke up to another email. Subject, you've been selected. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Not just a finalist, the finalist. They were flying me out, putting me up in a hotel, The top 5 would walk the runway at a private showcase in New York. Media, judges, industry reps, real stakes. And the winner would be announced live. I read the email 3 times, hand over my mouth. And then I laughed. A full-body, shaking laugh that startled the cat and echoed off the unfinished drywall of my basement ceiling. Because this was it. Not just a win, a moment. A real one. But I didn't tell my parents. And I definitely didn't tell Jenna. When I left for New York, I told them I was attending a week-long design workshop. Networking stuff, I said. Probably won't amount to much, but could be good experience. They nodded, mildly impressed I was doing something with people in the field. Jenna didn't even look up from her phone. Bring me back something from Soho, she said. Something cool. Vintage, not touristy. I said sure. But I brought her nothing. New York was a dream. Cold, chaotic, beautiful in the way that makes you feel both tiny and infinite at the same time. The other contestants were older, some full-time designers, some sculptors. I was the only one who had thrift store receipts and glue-scarred fingers. But when I walked out on that stage, they saw me. The judges, the photographers, the crowd, they didn't laugh. They leaned in. The costume caught the light in all the right ways. The movement flowed perfectly. My shoulder rig, rock solid. The framing, weightless. Every layer told a story. Every angle revealed something new. When I stepped off stage, one of the event reps caught my arm. Who are you? She asked, eyes wide. I just smiled. Noah, I said. I'm just getting started. I landed back home with the kind of calm that only comes from having a secret too good to share. One of those quiet, smug, keep it in your pocket secrets that sits in your chest like a warm ember. I didn't tell anyone I won. Not yet. Because I wanted the reveal to hurt. And more importantly, I wanted it to matter. See, after the Creative Forge competition, my life didn't just change. It accelerated. It's like the universe finally stopped dragging its feet and decided to put me on a moving sidewalk. After I won, my inbox went from the occasional DM to an avalanche. Requests, interviews, collab offers. Someone from a fashion incubator in LA even reached out and said they were deeply interested in Driftworks as a sustainable, next-gen wearable art label. But I played it cool. I told them I'd consider it in the spring, because I still had unfinished business back home. When I walked through the front door of our house, duffel bag in hand, there was Jenna, sprawled out on the couch in a cashmere cardigan and fuzzy designer socks, scrolling through her phone with the same half-absent air of a movie star waiting for someone to bring her tea. You're back, she said flatly. Yup, I said. She didn't even ask how it went. Mom emerged from the kitchen holding a bowl of some holiday snack mix. How was the workshop, honey? I smiled. Pretty great, actually. Dad appeared from behind the fridge door with a beer. Make any connections? A few, I said. You never know what might come from it. Jenna rolled her eyes. Yeah, well, I've got my thing going next week. Influencers shoot up in Vermont. This resort wants me to model their winter gear. Free trip? Dad asked, interested. Of course, she said, flipping her hair. They even gave me a bonus to cover ski lessons. Apparently my snow bunny aesthetic is off the charts. Mom laughed like it was the most charming thing she'd ever heard. I just went downstairs. That night, in my room, I finally unzipped the garment bag from New York. The winning costume was still intact, polished, flawless. I hung it up next to the other pieces I'd started, new designs for the Portland Gallery and another concept for a spring collection. Each one told a story. Each one was mine. But I wasn't ready to go public yet, because something unexpected happened that next morning. Something that tilted the entire board in my favor. Jenna knocked on my door. I opened it cautiously, expecting another jab or request for tech help. But she stood there looking different. Not mean, not smug, just slightly uncertain. Like she was about to ask for a favor, but wasn't sure if she'd have to sugarcoat it first. Hey, she said. You got a minute? I stepped aside, and she came in, scanning the room like she hadn't been down here in years, which was probably true. What's up? I asked. So, you remember the Halloween contest? She began. I nodded slowly. She gave an awkward laugh. Dumb question. Of course you do. Anyway, one of the panelists from that night, the influencer chick, Chloe something, she reached out to me last week. Said she remembered my costume. I waited. And she's putting together this big charity event next month. Fashion-forward holiday fundraiser, tons of press. They're doing this segment on sustainable fashion meets performance art, and she wants me to be in it. I blinked. Really? Yeah. She said she loved the Medusa look, the drama, the presence. But here's the thing. She shifted, awkward. She said she's not just looking for models. She wants each guest to wear something custom-made, one of a kind, statement pieces. And she asked if I knew anyone who made wearable art out of unconventional materials. She paused. So, I thought of you. There it was. I kept my face neutral. You want me to design something for you? She gave a sheepish smile. I mean, yeah, you've gotten better, clearly. And I figured it could be cool. A collaboration. I get exposure. You get your work in front of a high-end crowd. I let that sit. Because there were so many things I could have said. So many snarky, justified, cutting responses. But I didn't say any of them. Instead, I smiled. Sure. Jenna blinked. Wait, seriously? Yeah. Let's collaborate. I saw the confusion flicker across her face. Maybe even a touch of suspicion. But I'd said it with enough casual confidence that she didn't question it out loud. Cool, she said slowly. So, we need to start this week. The event's on the 19th, and they want press photos by the 15th. Send me the brief, I said. I'll get some ideas together. And that was it. She left the room, bouncing slightly on her toes. Probably already imagining how she'd pose in front of step-and-repeat banners with paparazzi flashing around her, wearing something made by her weird little brother who finally got it together. But I didn't open any design file that night. Instead, I pulled up the press list for the event. It was massive. Fashion bloggers, YouTube stylists, sustainability influencers, even a rep from a major online art magazine. The kind of crowd that couldn't care less about Jenna's fake laugh brand deals or curated vacation pics. They cared about concepts, about narratives, about truth. And I had one hell of a story to tell. I made a list of every journalist attending. I found their socials. I drafted a private message, short, professional, anonymous, and scheduled them to go out the week of the event. Nothing inflammatory, nothing rude, just the facts. At the Halloween party in late October, Jenna Graves mocked a thrifted costume that went on to win the $10,000 Creative Forge Prize in New York. That costume, created by her younger brother, the same one designing her piece for the upcoming charity event. Just thought you'd want the context. Wearable art has a very long memory. Then I started designing her costume. And that was the real art. I called it Vanity Cage. The structure was elaborate. A golden, corset-like bodice made of bent silverware, shattered compact mirrors, and pieces of old phone cases. The skirt fanned out in layers of twisted photo paper, all of it printed with watermarked selfies. The crown? A hollow ring of lipstick tubes and cracked sunglasses. It looked regal. Stunning, even. But the closer you looked, the more grotesque it became. A monument to ego. A shrine to image. Beautiful at a distance, but warped up close. Jenna loved it. Oh my God, she said when I showed her the prototype. It's so high fashion. What's it called? Vanity Cage, I replied. She laughed. God, that's so me. I said nothing. By the time the event rolled around, I had locked in 3 more commissions. One from a college theater professor, one from a drag performer in Atlanta, and one from an arts foundation that wanted to feature me in their spring newsletter. Driftworks hit 8,000 followers. A micro-influencer still, but rising fast. And still, no one at home knew I'd won the Creative Forge competition. Not Jenna, not Mom, not Dad. They still thought I'd gone to some workshop, which made what happened next all the more satisfying. The event was held in a glitzy midtown ballroom, one of those industrial spaces repurposed into a haven for the fashionable elite. Exposed brick walls, dimly lit chandeliers, and tables dressed with minimalist gold centerpieces that cost more than my entire wardrobe. Everyone was there. The kind of crowd Jenna salivated over. Influencers with millions of followers, stylists who talked in adjectives, magazine photographers with tight black turtlenecks, and looser morals. It was a perfect stage, and I had written the script. Jenna had no idea. She thought this night was about her. And in a way it was. But not the way she imagined. The charity event was a mix of fashion and fundraising. High fashion meets high cause. The centerpiece was the Vision Parade, a runway-style walk where each invited guest wore a one-of-a-kind sustainable art piece. Each model would walk out, be announced, and then take photos with the press and panel for coverage. Jenna's name was on the list. So was her piece, Vanity Cage, by Driftworks. The show started at 7 sharp. By 6:45, she was in the dressing area, twirling in front of the full-length mirror with a look of reverence, almost worship, on her face. She was in love with herself, the way she looked, the shape of the costume, the little details she didn't understand but knew others would praise. "I look like a freaking goddess," she whispered, hands grazing the sculpted bodice like it was diamond-encrusted armor. "You're a genius." I stood behind her, arms crossed, silent. "You have to start tagging your work, Noah," she added, fluffing her hair. "Seriously, we're gonna get so many reposts. Everyone's gonna want one of these." "We'll see," I said. She didn't notice my tone. Or maybe she did and thought nothing of it. Jenna was the type who believed tone only mattered if it was flattering. At 6:59, an event coordinator ushered us backstage. I gave Jenna one last adjustment. A gentle shift of the crown on her head, a slight tug of the layered shoulder pieces, and whispered, "Walk slow. Let them absorb you." She winked. "Please. I was born for this." The lights dimmed. Music pulsed low and ambient, the kind of sound that makes you feel like something important is about to happen. The announcer began reading the intros. One by one, the models walked out in their bespoke pieces, some graceful, some avant-garde, some ridiculous in that only cool because it's weird kind of way. And now, presenting a commentary on digital identity and consumer vanity. Vanity Cage, designed by Driftworks, modeled by Jenna Graves. Her name rang through the hall like a bell. The curtain parted, and Jenna stepped into the spotlight. She owned it. She walked like she knew everyone was looking, because they were. Cameras flashed. A hush fell. The outfit caught the light in shimmering waves, the mirror shards on her bodice refracting in every direction. From a distance, she looked like royalty forged from stardust and broken dreams. People leaned forward. Phones went up. Someone near the front murmured, "Wow," exactly the kind of reaction Jenna fed on. She made it to the end of the runway, paused, posed, turned. More flashes. And then silence. The announcer returned to the mic. And now, a short behind-the-scenes feature from the artist behind Vanity Cage. Jenna's smile faltered. "What?" she muttered, too far from the mic to be heard. A giant projection screen descended behind her. She turned to look. The lights dimmed slightly, not blackout, but enough for the video to pop. And then it played. It started with a time-lapse of the costume's creation. Thrift store bins, scissors cutting into broken handbags, hot glue melting over metallic mesh. My hands. My sketches. My studio. The process. Then came the caption. From trash to truth. How Vanity Cage was born after the artist was publicly humiliated at a Halloween party. The room stirred. The video didn't name Jenna outright. It didn't have to. It was all implication, suggestion, and context. Clips of press coverage from Creative Forge. The winning design. Quotes from judges about a deeply personal, pointed commentary on superficial culture and digital self-worship. Then came the audio. A recording, pulled from my phone, of Jenna's voice at the Halloween party. Not doctored. Just raw. "He lives in our parents' basement. Honestly, he probably came just for the free food." Homeless chic meets garbage sculpture. And then, the final frame. Driftworks doesn't just repurpose materials. It repurposes moments. Even the cruel ones. Fade to black. Silence. The lights came back up. Jenna was frozen in place. Her mouth slightly open. Her eyes glassy. And then, the whispers started. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just murmurs. Glances. Shifting feet. A woman near the front lowered her camera slowly. Someone else raised an eyebrow and whispered to the person next to them. One of the panelists, a stylist with purple glasses and a reputation for being brutal, jotted something in a notebook and didn't look back up. Jenna turned toward backstage, stumbling slightly in her heels. She nearly tripped on the corner of her own skirt, a ruffle made of old Instagram filters I'd screen-printed onto recycled silk. When she got behind the curtain, I was already there, waiting. Her voice was sharp. Panicked. What was that? I looked at her, really looked, and saw it. The panic under the anger. The fear behind the confusion. She'd always controlled the narrative. But now she was just another page in mine. "I told a story," I said calmly. "That's what artists do." Her hands curled into fists. "You used me." "No," I said. "You used me. I just made it worth something. You humiliated me." I tilted my head. Did I say anything that wasn't true? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. "You sabotaged me, Noah." "No." I said again. You sabotaged me. On Halloween. You bent my fastener. You laughed at me. You told people I was trash. And the world believed it. So I gave them something else to believe. She stared at me, breathing hard. I made you look amazing, I added. And I made sure they knew exactly what it cost. I'm your sister. You were. She went silent. The press flooded backstage after the show. I stepped away before she could stop me, slipping into a crowd of designers and reporters asking for my name, my card, my process. Someone handed me a glass of champagne. Another asked if I was available for an upcoming documentary on sustainable fashion. I smiled, humble, gracious. But inside, I burned. Not with rage. Not with revenge. With clarity. This wasn't the end of Jenna's world. She'd recover. She always did. But for once, I was the story. I had the platform. I had the power. And I didn't raise my voice, didn't seek to destroy her. I simply held up a mirror and made her walk through it. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. Not dramatic. Not explosive. No screaming matches or viral meltdowns. Just slow, creeping fallout, like frost spreading across a window pane. Cold, quiet, undeniable. Jenna didn't come home that night. I stayed at the event until well after midnight, nursing a second glass of champagne and talking to a stylist who wanted to commission a piece for a magazine spread. When I finally caught a late rideshare back to our parents' house, the living room lights were still on. Mom was pacing in her robe, a half-drunk glass of wine on the counter. Dad sat on the couch, staring at a paused YouTube live stream of the fashion show on the TV. Jenna still frozen on screen in her glittering cage of broken mirrors and vanity. He didn't look up when I walked in. Mom did. Noah, she said, voice tight. What was that? I dropped my bag near the stairs. You watched it. We all saw it. Your sister. You. She struggled to finish the sentence. She's devastated. She's humiliated. I corrected. She trusted you. I let out a short, cold laugh. Trusted me? Like she trusted me not to embarrass the family on Halloween? Or when she told everyone I lived in a basement and called my work garbage? Mom opened her mouth, but I didn't stop. I didn't lie, Mom. I didn't make anything up. I told the truth. And for once, people actually heard me. That was family business, she snapped. You made it public. And she didn't. I shot back. Mocking me at a public event. Sabotaging my costume. Laughing while her friends said I looked homeless. She made me a joke in front of dozens of people. The only difference is my story had a better punchline. That shut her up. Dad still hadn't spoken. He just sat there, watching the screen, Jenna's frozen image pixelated behind the soft yellow glow of the floor lamp. I won the Creative Forge competition, I added. The one in New York? $10,000. National coverage. That workshop you all dismissed? That was me becoming someone. Mom blinked. You never said. Because you never asked. My voice was firm. Not yelling. Just undeniable. The silence stretched. Dad finally spoke. You planned this. It wasn't an accusation. Just an observation. Yeah, I said. I did. He looked at me, and for the first time in a long while, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't disinterest or vague disappointment. It was respect. Or maybe fear. Same difference. Mom sat down slowly, her glass trembling slightly in her hand. Jenna's been crying for hours. I didn't reply. I just picked up my bag and walked past them, heading toward the basement door. She wants to talk to you. Mom called after me. You should call her. I paused, then turned my head slightly. She knows where to find me. I didn't call. The next few days were a blur of interviews, emails, and sudden decisions. I met with a rep from an art college who wanted to feature my work in a spring exhibit. A startup offered me a modest contract to help prototype wearable tech inspired by Driftworks. The Portland Gallery confirmed my piece would be the headliner for their March show. And that LA fashion incubator? They fast-tracked me for a grant. By New Year's, I'd signed a lease on a small loft downtown. Big windows. Exposed brick. The kind of place with bad insulation and great lighting. I moved out while Jenna was still taking time for herself, holed up in a friend's apartment in Brooklyn. Word was, she'd lost a couple brand deals. Nothing huge, but noticeable. One fitness company quietly replaced her with another influencer. Her holiday partnership with a luxury candle brand got postponed indefinitely. She'd posted a vague apology on her story the night after the show. Sometimes we hurt the people closest to us without realizing it. Growth is uncomfortable. I'm taking space to reflect and do better. No mention of me. No tag. Just a white screen with script font text and a crying emoji. Classic Jenna. But the DMs I got from people who recognized her voice in that video, from creatives who'd been belittled by their own families, from young artists who saw themselves in my story, that was real. The response wasn't a flood, but it was steady, constant, loyal. Driftworks hit 15,000 followers by January, and then something unexpected happened. Jenna called. I didn't answer at first. Let it ring. Let her feel what silence sounded like. But she called again, and again. On the fourth try, I picked up. Hey, she said, voice small. I said nothing. She exhaled, shaky. I deserved it. Still nothing. I didn't think you'd ever fight back. Not like that. You mean effectively? I said. No, she said quickly. I mean publicly. You beat me. You made me the joke. You made yourself the joke. I just gave the audience a program. She was quiet for a while. Then she said, I'm sorry. And she sounded like she meant it. But something in me had changed. I didn't need her apology like I used to. I wasn't starved for her approval anymore. I wasn't waiting to be seen. I know, I said. But it doesn't undo it. No, she agreed. It doesn't. We talked for a little longer. About the show. About the costume. She asked if I'd keep doing commissions. I told her yes. She asked if I'd ever design for her again. I said I'd think about it. And I meant that, too. Because revenge wasn't about destroying her. It was about reclaiming me. My voice. My name. My art. For the first time in my life, people saw what I built. Not as a joke. Not as the weird kid in the basement. But as a designer. A creator. A storyteller. That winter, I framed the check from Creative Forge. Hung it in my new studio above my workstation. Right next to it, I pinned a note, scribbled on the back of an old receipt from the thrift store where I'd bought the pieces for that first costume. It read, They laughed. You built. Never forget which one lasts. And every morning, when the sun streamed through those warehouse windows and hit that frame just right, I'd sip my coffee, glance at the note, and smile. Because in the end, the insult paid off very nicely.
Trying to get blitzed. I do want to... How's bouldering? I also have not been bouldering. We have not been doing either thing. Did I miss the bulldog? Not yet, not yet. We're going to do it soon. I just finished cooking. I meal prepped for it. Okay, good. You want to see me do bulldog? I'm waiting for everyone to come in and then I'll do it. And that's why you're breathing heavy, out of shape. No, I'm breathing heavy probably because I'm talking too much. And when I talk a lot, I take really short breaths. So I'm not really good. You want to know? I know how to skate. I know how to skate. I just want to, like be able to do tricks and stuff. Like figure skating. Hydrate. I can eat bulldog 2 times spicy. Damn.